recording and make this a little bit smaller. Here's the deal, guys. I'm your next instructor. I'll teach the rest of this project management course with Professor Demirkan. And I guess some of you are at the moment thinking, who's this guy? He came, he's just talking to us over the Zoom, but wouldn't it be better if we knew who this guy is? Yeah, that's why I have the next few slides. So first, I should tell you who I am. I'm Tayfun Keskin. My name is pronounced like typhoon, which means hurricane in the Southern Pacific. Draw your own conclusions on that. I'm an associate teaching professor at the University of Washington, Foster School of Business, starting very recently. Before that, I was at UTRGV, University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. I taught several undergraduate and MBA courses at the University of Texas and University of Washington before. These range from undergraduate level information management analysis to master's level business process management. And those courses have been online, in social media analytics to enterprise analytics. So I have more than 10 years of teaching experience. As far as more about who I am, I worked in the industry before. Before finishing my PhD, I actually worked at several Fortune 500 companies, including P&G. That was my first full-time job as a process engineer. And then I worked at Oracle as a project manager. I guess that would be the most relevant to this teaching position. And I worked at Kraft Foods as a marketing data analyst. In terms of educational background, you should all know that I'm an engineer. Electrical and electronics engineer, to be more specific. So I was one of those guys who sit in front of the computer, design microchips, code and assembly. And I realized I don't want to spend so much time in front of a screen. I resigned. I went and got my MBA and another master's degree, MSc in Information Systems. This is from UT Austin. And I continued to get my PhD in Information Systems from the University of Texas, Austin, McCombs School of Business. I guess that background gives me a unique insight to talk about project management. The second point I want to talk about is why project management important. Of course, at this point, I know you are close to graduation. For you, project management is important because you want to graduate as soon as possible. But my perspective is a little bit different. Project management is essential for many reasons. I can go over an entire book of definitions right now, but I'm gonna go back to my first real project management course when I was an MBA student. I had a great project management professor. He came to the class and said, all of you are project managers, and you are too. In this classroom, all of you are project managers. But then he added, you are not very good project managers. I bet if I give you a project such as building this library, the entire building with every little thing inside it, and if I give you infinite amount of time, infinite amount of budget, yes, you can do it. But that's not good project management. The real project managers do it in a limited time with a limited budget. And project management has been there for a very long time. As soon as humans got together and said, let's do this, let's do something. Even ancient Egyptians, when they were building pyramids, they were doing some kind of a project management. The project was to rebuild that pyramid, that triangle thing, and they made plans. So why is it essential? Because not everybody has unlimited time and unlimited budget. Project management ensures that you are delivering what is aligned with the strategy of your firm or organization. It brings leadership and direction. It creates a proper plan. It should also manage change. Even in contemporary project management areas, we see so many times where change is not managed very well. Remember, I told you I was at Procter & Gamble. I want to go back to my memories again. I worked there for 2 years. After 2 years, I left. I started my MBA. And during MBA, you kind of go back and meet with your friends. I went to my old company. My friends wanted to have dinner with me. And we went to dinner. There were like at least 10 people at this dinner. And they showed a young new engineer. He said, I'm the new guy. They hired me for your position. And I said, what do you do? What kind of projects? Tell me. And he said, I have this amazing project where I increase the quality of the products we are producing. By the way, Procter & Gamble, when I worked there, manufactures detergents. I was at the packaging department, so it's nothing fancy. I was literally the guy who puts the detergent into the boxes. No, that's not that complex, but it requires a lot of complex playing. So around that, I said, what do you do as in terms of project? And this new engineer said, I increased the quality of these boxes. And my question was, how did you increase the quality? Because I know one solution, quality increase, if you have a manufacturing plant, is done by reducing the speed. But in my 2 years, entire 2 years, my biggest project is to increase the speed. So for 2 years, I increased the speed of the lines and I've been promoted for it. And the next guy came, I was wondering, how did you increase the quality? He said, I reduced the speed. He reduced the speed about 10% and that increased the quality. So in a nutshell, change management is important. Apparently, all the project folders I created, everything I did was collecting dust in a little box, I guess, and nobody remembered what has been done before the new guy. And at one point in time, if anyone comes to you and asks, why is it important that we manage project? Why are you hired in this position? You can take this list, of course, modify it a little bit according to the position and use it to explain why project management is essential. As far as what is next, we will have 4 meetings, including today's. Today is July 18th. We are meeting right now, and we will cover module 2. I'm going to go over everything, and we have a specific request to talk more about critical path. And after that, we'll wait for another week for the next module. And we have 1 week breaks between the module 2 and module 3 and module 4. Then we will have a 2-week break for module 5. That's mostly because I have another course and I look at the squeeze in that course in between. Okay, let's start to the next slide. Does everybody see my screen?
Yes, you see fine.
Yeah.
Okay. If you all see the screen, Anna. In the next part, we will talk about project, program, and portfolio selection. In terms of project selection, learning objectives are these. It's essentially going over how we select the right projects. And there are plenty of tools about it, but in my experience, nothing beats previous experience in project management, because most of the numbers you make in order to get a project selected, in my from what I've seen in the field, are not the correct numbers. They are just estimates based on educated guesses. There are problems need to be defined, and opportunities need to be followed in order to select project management. Then after that, you find a sponsor who will write the check, then get authorized. Finally, you go over the project's process. When you are selecting a project, make sure the problem is agreed upon, because there has been so many cases where people start projects as the customer thinks everything is okay. Like, why do we do a project? Because there is something to solve, right? And when I was at Kraft Foods, I was doing mostly IT stuff, helping IT. I was not a computer fixing guy. I was in marketing department, but I was helping them to set up the systems. So we fixed accounting department systems, fixed in quotation marks. They had this terrible information system. Does anyone here know these cathode CRT screens? It wasn't even black and white, it was green and black. They had this laser dot printer. Again, I don't know if any one of you are old enough to remember laser dot printers, but laser dot printers sound like jet engine when you print something. So they had this terribly old system. We changed everything. We provided new machines connected to an enterprise system. Guess what? What do you think those accounting people said at Kraft Foods? Did they appreciate that they got these new laptops connected to all the other systems?
No.
Do you want to elaborate that? No, Chris? Clinton, I think.
No, people generally just do not like change. So if you change the process that you use day to day, they're going to be the squeaky wheel.
Exactly right. Actually, there has been a revolt because we didn't agree on the problem and we didn't really ask them. They literally said, we are not working because you took our computer. By the way, for 8 personnel, for 8 people, there was 1 computer. I don't know what the other 7 were doing at the time. And they said, we cannot work. So accounting department entirely stopped just because we didn't communicate well. This was one of my first learnings in terms of project management, where you need to really identify the problem and agree on it before just jumping in and solve them. So most projects begin with an opportunity, need, or requirement. And yes, we talk about opportunities, problems, or someone from the top tells you, hey, you need to do this. And there's a 4th reason. It might be legal. There might be legal reasons in order to undertake a project. As you can see, I don't like reading the entire slide, so we might go a little bit faster. And all these slides are posted along with some videos on your Canvas system. If you have any concerns about reading them, you can always go back. On the other hand, we can talk. If you need to talk with me, feel free to email. We can arrange a chat. In order to select projects, first you need to look at the big picture, strategic plan. sometimes you might receive projects that might not be aligned with the rest of the company. For example, let's pick a company, Walmart. What do you think Walmart's vision is? Real at the top, the goal of this company. What is its business model?
World domination?
World domination? No, it's not Spectre. Walmart is aiming for world domination. I agree in that. But their real goal is cost reduction. Walmart's real goal. If you don't believe me, go to a Walmart store and look around you. You'll see a lot of low cost, all value things. Value is the code name for cost nowadays. So long story short, Walmart executives, those people with C in their title, sit around and decided that cost is our goal. We have to reduce costs. So if you go to Walmart and say, hey, I'm going to spend a lot of money. I'm going to make the fanciest Walmart store ever. Would it be aligned with the overall goals?
No, because that would drive the price up.
Exactly right. It will be go against cost. Whatever you do in Walmart, even if you say, I'm going to buy this expensive computer, you have to explain why it should reduce the cost. So aligned. You should be aligned with what those C-level people decided. On the other hand, at Whole Foods, that would be a completely different picture because as far as I know, there are no cost-related strategies at Whole Foods. If anything, they sell one apple for $5. It's the opposite of cost. They focus on the customer experience. And
nickname is Whole Paycheck.
Yes, exactly right. Rip off your whole check, whole paycheck for an apple. Was that Lisa?
Yes.
Okay. So it starts, the project selection starts at the top. By the way, I see that some of you are writing in chat. There is no way I can follow both and go over the slides. Don't worry, I will check them and I will save whatever you write in chat, and I will take all of that as participation. Just keep on writing if you have questions, but if I don't answer, don't take it personally because I have one screen here where I look at the slides. Anyways, once the project is aligned, directors and department managers analyze their needs, stakeholders propose the projects, and I think I was one of them at this stage when I was a project manager, and allocate the resources so that others can follow. In projects, in order to select the right one, we have multiple financial analysis. You have probably seen some of these. For example, MPV, even in very basic Excel courses, people teach what net present value is, which is a tool, which can be a good tool in order to support why a project makes sense. There's another, return on investment or payback analysis. Net present value is a method of calculating the net monetary gain. What you do essentially is to take a discount rate and then pull all the future earnings into time zero. For example, here we see two different projects, project one at the top, project two at the bottom. As you can see, cash flow of these projects in this column, column 6, you spend $5,000 now, and then after this, you earn 1, 2, 3, 4 over time. When you add these up, it will add to 10. So your total cash flow is 5, but net present value is not, because you are spending 5,000 now and getting 5,000 years from now. You have to find a way to collect all that money. There is a net present value formula in Excel, but essentially that formula says you multiply the future returns with one, you actually divide in order to pull it to today, divide them with 1 plus R. R is the discount rate, And every year you do that. This says $4,000 in year 5 is not $4,000 today. There are different calculations, but net NPV is one of the ubiquitous ones. I recommend you to check that if you don't know what's going on. But I guess most of this class, considering some of you are even teachers, are aware of what net present value is. Second one is return on investments. The return on investment is income divided by the investment. Rather than ROI, unlike NPV, rather than giving a dollar, it gives you a ratio. For example, if you invest $100 today and in the next year your investment is 110, your return on investment is $10, which you will gain, divided by 100 is 0.1. And finally, payback analysis could be used. You look at a payback period. It shows how long it will take until you get your money back. Everything after that date should be additional income. People like to hear that. Okay, I'm giving you my money. This is especially useful when you're asking other people's money. I'm giving you my money, but how long will it take until I get it back? This explains the payback.
So in my experience, this is the one that's hardest for us in IT and cybersecurity, because oftentimes there's not a very good payback on that, right? Because it's just a cost of doing business. If you need a new switch, it's hard to justify that.
Yes, Clinton. Even if you justify it, in my experience, a fight starts saying whose payback it is. For example, I've been in many IT projects where we went in, set up an enterprise system, and the sales increased, okay? We increased the sales 20%, for example. But then I can show, with some educated guesses, I can show that after this project, you will get your money in, let's say, 1 year. But the problem is, when you're in a meeting with the sales department and marketing, they say, no, 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 you did the project, but it has nothing to do with sales increase. It's because our sales people on the field worked harder and they increased the sales. So yes, it's one of the hardest ones. It doesn't discourage you from doing it though. You can still do it. Present this to the upper management, and most of the time upper management, especially if they understand the value of IT, they will understand its value.
Sure, sure.
Couldn't you?
Okay, I'm sorry.
Couldn't you liken this to the annual loss expectancy type calculation? Jeff, you probably would be the best person to help with that.
Can you elaborate on that, Lynn?
So the annual loss expectancy math, basically, it takes your single loss event and multiplies it by what might happen in a year. So, I mean, there's some pretty good examples in the CISP test. But basically, so like Clinton's talking about replacing a switch. So you could liken it to the CIA, where if you lose a switch, what happens to your availability, right? And do the math that way.
Yes,
and I think that would give you an ROI.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yes.
Actually, you can look at not even like a switch. You can look at any probabilistic event. For example, what is the probability that University of Washington Tacoma will be hacked in the next year? Some hacker will go into UW Tacoma and steal all our information. The probability is 50%, because every year 50% of the US state universities are hacked. So then you look how much you will lose. Let's say we will spend $100,000 if this happens. Yes, you can actually calculate $100,000 times 0.5 gives you an expected cost at this point, and that should give you an additional support on why this project is needs to be supported. Is that what you were talking, Nick?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the other thing that security does a lot is you got to bring a partner, because really you're a regulator on some IT aspect or business aspect, and you're slowing them down, right? You have a problem with your program that's hurting their program, and if you can show how your project can help add speed, efficiency, or lower cost to their processes, that's a great way to sell your story in information security.
I agree. Bringing partners, of course, there's a threshold when there are too many heads working on a project. It might be a little bit harder to manage, but yes, I agree completely, Jeff. Bringing a partner can benefit the overall project. Are there any other questions, or does anyone want to add? Okay, let's continue with the weighted scoring model. Weighted scoring model, again, it's relatively simple. You identify weights to specific criteria, and then you multiply those weights with the scores you give. It's very similar to how professors do at the end of the semester for grading. For example, you can give 30% to cases, 20% to quizzes, 50% to exams. Did it add 200? Yeah, I think so. Then with those weights, you multiply weights with the grades you give and add them up. You essentially do this. How is it useful? Well, if you have multiple projects, it gives you a nice picture like the one in the slide. Project 1 collects a weight of 56. Why? Because it has weights like these, and some of these grades here, like 20s, 25s, had a negative impact. On the other hand, project 2 collected 78.5 score. So if I were one of the process engineers in this department, I would go with doing the project 2 first, as long as it's not too risky. And finally, I'll talk a little bit about balanced scorecard. Balanced scorecard is another approach developed by these two academics, but it evolved over time. It converts an organizational value drivers into a series of defined metrics. Especially large companies like this a lot, because as I told you, a project needs to be aligned first. And most of the time, projects that the little guys want to do at the bottom of the food chain are different than the projects that the top guys want to do. For example, when I was working at IT department, all my projects were about getting more expensive computers. Yes, that would give me more benefit, but most of the time my goal was to take that computer home and play nicer games. So it is not aligned with the overall company goal, because my manager, his manager, and his manager above that doesn't want me to play games. So how can I be more aligned? You can go with the balanced scorecard method, where the vision is defined first. And then from that vision, you identify goals, which should be measurable goals. Then you look at the projects from a different perspectives, ranging from customer to growth. At the end of balanced scorecard, you mostly have a list. From that list, it's clear that which projects are aligned with the company goals, which are not. This is a little bit independent of NPV. So some projects' net present value can look really high, but you can select another project. Why? Because that another project might be more aligned with the company goals. So that is the benefit of balanced scorecard. Okay, we have one more person to admit. At this point, we have 34 people. I'm guessing it's not too much because at this point I was thinking to divide you into rooms and have discussions. So let's try breakout rooms. 33 participants. Let's say if there are 3 participants, no, let's make it 5. Let's make it 6 rooms. I'm going to send all of you to rooms. Try to remember this question. In your past work, have you ever seen any issues with project selection? What was the issue? Why did it happen? What was the cause? I'll give you around 5 to 10 minutes. I'll try to visit each group. When you are done, when I realize you are done, you'll come back and I want to hear from each group. So again, your question is, in your past work, have you ever seen any issues with project selection? What was the issue? Why did it happen? So get ready to complain about your previous business experience, any issue, but this issue must be related to project selection. And keep on asking why in order to find the cause. Okay. You've been invited to the rooms. So if you accept, you will go to that room. And I'll go around the rooms. Hello, breakout room 1. How are you?
Yeah, we're number 1.
Yes, you are the lucky one. I wonder why did I send 6 people here and there are only 5? Some people are still sleeping. I think they.
Yeah, somebody went to coffee probably.
Yeah.
Not enough of that.
Do you still see the slide in this breakout room?
I do not.
Okay.
No, but I did save it.
That's okay. That's what I wanted to know, because the question is, complain about your previous project selection experiences.
So project selection is at like the enterprise level, department level, and like can it be initiative within the department that we have a prioritized list of initiative and then one initiative I'm trying to push, but it was not selected, that level? Or because some of the companies are large, like if we talk about
It
T-Mobile.
can be any level.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Of course, it should be your experience. I mean, you should be involved in one way or the other. So if it's a completely different project, you might not be able to explain why at the end. Think about a scenario, a story that you can say why did this happen. Why did they didn't? Why, for example, you said they didn't select your project. Why didn't they select your project?
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to the other room.
A quick question, please.
Yes, Lisa.
How would you prefer to be addressed? Is it Typhon? Is it Dr. Keskin? Is it Dr. Typhon?
Typhoon is fine.
Okay.
I go with Typhoon all the time. Dr. Keskin is fine. As long as you don't call me dude, that's acceptable.
Okay. It's whatever you prefer, so whatever's good with you.
Typhoon is good.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, I'm going to other groups.
Yeah, I think what I've seen.
That they don't want to take the time to build all that out before they start working on the actual product, because that's the easy part, because people already know how to kind of achieve that goal, and that's the shorter term deliverable, versus the project as a whole.
Project selection would be, I would think kind of up to the project team who's going to accept it, I guess. As a project manager, your job is really to facilitate the project with the budget, time, and scope, and to deliver the project to the customer within that, allotted time. So as far as project selection goes, as a project manager, I'm not really that involved with selecting the projects. We give input.
I'm on a weird team at Costco with basically the IT PMO office. And I don't work on that team. I work on the awareness team, but like 90 or 80% of the rest of the people in the team are all project managers, not just IT, excuse me, InfoSec project managers. And so all I know is that all their projects get selected basically by sponsors. So they go to work directly, usually for directors in InfoSec.
Have any issue? What was the issue? Why did it happen? What was the cause? Hello, Professor. We lost one of our participants, and we're going to ask her the questions via Slack. So, and then I think Carolina is having communication difficulties. So, Ian, you want to go?
Sorry, I'm just visiting the groups one by one to see everything is moving on. Do you have any questions for me?
I don't think so. Ian?
Okay. Then good luck.
Hey, Derek.
I'm switching the groups.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Knowing about, and you're over designing most of the time, to make sure that at least, the minimum requirements met. And of course, when you do that, the cost goes to the roof, you're always over the budget, and, I mean, I personally made a lot of mistake, when I say mistake, it's like over like $2 million mistake by over, designing certain things, even ordering, purchasing things over $2 million, which, I got, my hand stabbed at the end of the job by just, making that, $2 million mistake. And, my goal was just to over design it, at least to be in the safe side. But, apparently that hit me, so. Yeah, you should, yeah. It's like, did you have and were you the dedicated project manager on that, or were you just the engineer working on that?
I'm both, I had a bunch of, vendors working for me, but I was the guy who had to sign off on the, on the design at the end of the day. So I was the design manager. And again, it's really hard.
Hello.
Hi, Isaac.
This is Isaac Burke. How are you?
Well, good. You're done in your group?
No, I have a dental emergency, and I just got a call back from the dentist saying that I can come in right now. So
okay. No problem. I'm recording everything, and this is recorded. I'm sorry about it. It's going to be.
No, I'm so sorry. I had, Anyway, so
Okay, while we are waiting for 30 more seconds for people to come back, does anybody have any questions?
Not specifically, no.
Okay, we will continue with the second part. Oh, admit. We have newcomers. We have even more newcomers. I think some people, by mistake, left the entire Zoom instead of the those breakout rooms.
And there are some people that experienced technical difficulties. We had one on our team who got bounced out completely, then couldn't get back into the room, and then one person who's having some voice problems. So,
oh, sorry.
So we did our best to gather. We gathered some data from Slack. So
sorry about the experience. Online teaching is not ideal. Honestly, if it was up to me, I would rather be in the classroom. But this versus people getting sick from coronavirus, this is the better choice.
Yep.
Hey, Professor, is there a way to eliminate the black boxes that are on the screen? It looks like you just got rid of one of them.
There is. Just
Okay.
give me 1 second. I'm gonna eliminate them one by one. You should know that those black boxes, except this one on the corner, I can eliminate all of them, are there whenever someone joins. It gives me an alert to admit them, because I don't want to admit a Zoom bomber. I'm checking your names. So overall, whenever I teach and I record, I want to minimize. But now it should be fine, right?
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay.
You know, the only other thing is, are you sharing the whole screen or are you sharing the file?
I'm sharing the whole screen.
That's why you see the black ones. If you just share the file,
Okay.
Nobody should see that, if I remember correctly.
I
mean, it's not that it doesn't bother me.
So this is the file.
It also looks like he's in presentation mode for PowerPoint.
So you see, it's still there.
Okay, yeah. So if it's just the file, okay. I thought that
this is just the file. I know it because last time I was teaching a Foster class, I was sharing just the file. The problem with just sharing the file is when it ends, sharing stops, and it's
right.
I have to switch and share again, and
right.
I keep forgetting it. I did forget it last time. So let me go back to the screen. So if I get a message or anything, you will see all my messages. There's nothing confidential. This is my work laptop, no worries. Okay, let's continue. Am I recording? Yes, I am recording. Let's continue with the project initiation process. In terms of learning objectives, we will go over the top management commitment, prepare a business case, identify the stakeholders, and learn the components of a project charter here. In terms of initiation, probably in my experience, which is the most painful part of any project, because there are so many meetings, and believe me, I don't like most of them. It rather important though. You have to make sure the problem is identified carefully, and you inform everyone else about the goals, how it's aligned, why you should be committed, because some people need to write the check. Most of the time, even if it's not the money, you are working for an organization and you have to, the managers, your supervisors need to dedicate you for specific projects, and you can't work on infinite number of projects, despite the fact that some of my managers thought I would, but most of the times you cannot. That creates a project charter after the typical kickoff meeting. As I said before, this starts with the need or opportunity and goes all the way to the project approval. Typically the guy who, as I said before, writes the check. The project charter translates the value proposition into a specific project goal. Typically very short, and you have to have include these descriptions of the project opportunity, strategic implications, the team, so that managers know who to yell when there's a problem. And of course, known risks, assumptions, and constraints should be included. In terms of the project charter, most of them have a start date, which is good to have, along with an end date, project manager's name, statement of the problem, goals, risks. Hard to identify, but we will talk more about that at the last part of this module 2. Then project's team members along with the stakeholders. Statement of the project purpose of and scope. I'm going to elaborate some of the items that we have here. Statement of the project purpose and scope includes a small statement of the potential impact of the problem. Because if there is a problem, you need to explain why it is indeed a problem. And there will be others who will object, like my accounting department. They would say, hey, we don't have a problem. You think that we have a problem here? Our nice old computer with a laser dot printer doesn't work. But, excuse me, but there might be some parties typically disagree with your problem statement. So it might be a good idea to at least involve them. Even if you don't do what they exactly want, communication is critical. This statement also provides a high-level description of the work to be completed. Then there are goals. Goals should provide the people, all the stakeholders, not just the people who approve, what needs to be done. Goals should state overarching value, and goals should be action-oriented, value-oriented, and straightforward. Even in your life, I sometimes hear students giving very vague goals. For example, how many people here who had a goal before in the past saying, I'm going to learn Python? It sounds like a nice goal, isn't it? But it is not a specific goal, because learning Python is so vague. Yes, you can learn Python, what it is, from Wikipedia. You can learn a couple lines from a YouTube videos, but neither means you really measurably can use it in your real life. And I've even seen people who put a computing language on their resume without knowing it. So a more specific goal would be like, I'm going to finish such and such project with 0 bugs in Python. I'm going to finish this game. I'm going to make a Sudoku and finish it. That is more measurable in terms of goal. Here are some examples of project goal statements. Of course, these are typically elaborated significantly more. Oh, there is a SMART criteria. This is provided by Doran in early 80s. He found a way to fit nicely into the word SMART. I was doing this when I was an MBA student. A project goal should be specific. I mean, if you cannot specifically explain what's going on, then it shouldn't be a good goal. And it should be measurable. This is quite important. This is the part when I was talking about, I'm going to learn Python. How will you measure it? Is it with an exam? Will you finish your project? You never know. Assignable, realistic, and time related. Assignable means that should be assigned to a specific individual to do, because sometimes I see goals there standing, nobody responsible from what they are. And the realistic, again, I have seen managers especially aiming for too high, unrealistic expectations, impossible to achieve. Finally, a time. a time frame is needed on when the objectives are to be reached. Here's an example. Be the first to produce a moisturizing body wash targeting at the athletic market that gains competitive market share through continual production, cost reductions, and flexible manufacturing processes. Or as far as the objectives, here's our time: complete the project within 14 months or less, and there are other measurable objectives below. Risks, again, commonly forgotten part of any project. Why? Because humans by nature can be risk averse. We don't like to talk about bad things. I've seen this quite a number of times in the real life where there is an actual risk in front of you and people don't want to see it until risk materializes. And yes, maybe the risk will never come out. For example, when I was working in Istanbul, one of the biggest risks was earthquake. You know, Istanbul is in a fault line. It goes through in the middle of the city. And at the manufacturing plant, not considering this risk and doing all the projects around this is risk in itself. How do you include this into your goals? Well, you look at the probabilities. Risk should be associated to a probability. So if there are good card players among you, you will be much better project managers in terms of figuring out risks and taking them into account. There are other risks that are not related to environmental factors. For example, if you are implementing an enterprise system is a system that connects the entire department end to end. The probability of success of such a project is 20%. How do I know? Well, I worked at Oracle. When I was working there, it was single digits to maximum 15%, depending on the industry. Nowadays, when I contact my previous colleagues, they say we are much better. We go over 20% in terms of success. So if the chances of success is 20%, any enterprise system implementation is risky. Then you define the project's stakeholders. A stakeholder is anyone who has interest. Of course, at the core, there is the project manager who deals with day-to-day tasks. Typically, there is someone above the project manager, what we call project champion, who oversees the overall process of how the project is done. There is a project team. Of course, anyone who is connected into this project is a stakeholder. It can be your customers. It can be other colleagues who will use this system. All of them will be stakeholders. And in terms of stakeholder influence, the influence of the stakeholder, if the influence of stakeholders are high, that can affect the cost. There can be some delays, and stakeholder influence and the cost of change typically goes antagonistic to each other. A stakeholder analysis is often a good idea. What you do is to create a list of anyone who will be involved. And then don't be emotional. Rationally define their roles. There is even a matrix, I can find you that, where you define which one of these stakeholders are blockers, which one of them are your allies. In terms of the project team, any project team is a group who moves towards a common goal. Sometimes these project teams members evolve over time, it changes. in terms of structuring the project team, it's a very good idea to have people with diverse skills who can complement each other and sometimes work together really well. In my experience, it is also a good idea to have a team that has worked for a while, because interestingly, as project teams work together, they perform better. Just because they work together for some time, they work better. There's actually a theory in sociology and information systems, a theory called transactive memory, how teams work together based on who knows what, and that should be taken into consideration. Here is a list of project teams structure, who is supporting, this is the guy who writes the check, and this is the project manager and the entire teams. I don't even know why didn't they put the picture for the rest of the team. This is another sample project charter, which includes the title at the top, budget, who the project manager is, contact is always a good idea, objectives, success criteria, and approach after that. Here are the roles and responsibilities, each member role and their positions. Okay, as far as project initiation, I have another question. I'm going to post this question in the groups right now. I'm creating another breakout room. Let's create 5 breakout rooms this time. I want more people to be there. The question is, how important are kickoff meetings? Why not? Have you ever been to one? Tell your experiences. After this, I'm going to give a short break, but I will also copy this question to your breakout rooms. So let's open all rooms and I will post this. Not there.
There you go.
Okay.
See?
Recording.
Look at this stuff, isn't it neat?
Started.
That was awesome.
Here's
Was there a break time coming up, by the way? I think I missed my break time.
break. I'm assuming team questions are break because I want to finish this as fast as you want. You want to. So let's go over 2 more slides, and then remember, some of you asked about critical path method. I'm going to talk over that. So anyone can take a break. By the way, this is the good thing about Zoom sessions. You can take a break, and I won't even know it. So don't worry about the breaks.
Yeah, we just don't want to miss anything.
You won't. Everything is also recorded, and I will post them. So you are being recorded. I am sharing the screen. Now we will talk about defining the work. As far as defining the work, there are some tools for project initiation and definition. What are those? These are Pareto charts, cause and effect diagrams, and all the other different versions. And as the project management discipline is improving, there will be more tools in the future. But in my opinion, nothing beats brainstorming. What is that? Well, that's putting a few smart people in the room and they talk about how to fix a problem. It's a relatively easy process. It helps a project team to think about the components of a project charter. Brainstorming requires some level of creativity and hopefully experience in this field. And in terms of brainstorming, the project triad team brainstorm gives us some guideline of what should be within, what should be not within the project's scope. The goal is to, here in this example, is to be the first to produce a moisturizing body wash targeted at the athletic market that gains competitive market share through continual production cost reductions and flexible manufacturing processes. Here you see that some, for example, developing automated production facility and project teams distribution is within the scope, but others are not. This is best reached by brainstorming. Mind mapping is another method that I enjoy a lot.
So, Dr. T, I have a question.
Yes.
About brainstorming.
Yes, Lynn.
So it's one of my favorite methods to work with my team to, take care of internal problems. For the group here, the biggest thing that I am missing and the team is suffering from in working remote is the ability to get in the room and have a really good brainstorming session. Mm-hmm. And I'm struggling with in the remote setting to get that good brainstorming session. Anybody has any tips or tricks, or if there's another method that you're going to go through that we might be able to leverage instead because we can't get in the room and do a good brainstorming session?
Well, Lynn, I have bad news for you. Nothing beats face-to-face.
Yeah.
That's my experience. And I'm telling you this as a professor who do research in communication and information technologies. But because it's not natural. What we are doing right now over the Zoom is not equivalent to face-to-face. And what you are doing in your team over Skype or Zoom, whatever you are using, will not beat sitting together in a room and seeing all the small signals and gestures that people provide.
I would say that from a team's perspective, we're using a lot of tools. I thought Mural actually that a consultant brought was pretty good because it allowed the post-it note feel. It allowed us to put different images to like stamp around. It allowed voting, those kind of things. But it did require a facilitator who was really keeping us on task. So, but Mural I thought was interesting.
Yes, Jeff, you are right.
Jeff, can you post that tool to the Slack channel or the chat?
Yeah, if you can post it on the discussion board, others can benefit from that, Jeff. And you are right. There are tools and they are getting better. Don't get me wrong. We are not in the same situation where we were 10, 20 years ago. As the internet is moving faster, as we have more videos and other tools, yes, it is getting better. But so far, I've seen research on teams where they work in a virtual environment or in a real room. The performance is significantly better in person. As far as tools, I sometimes use them myself with my co-authors. I have a nice tripod behind you. You can see it right now. But I sometimes go in front of it and act like they are in the room. So all those kinds of actions, including using a new technology, can benefit. But again, Lynn, nothing beats face-to-face, in my opinion, so far. That's why students are complaining, because we are not in the same room too.
I have one personal experience
Yes.
back in when I was working in India. So there is no chance of getting face-to-face with the team in US. So we always use digital tools along with the Zoom or the WebEx sections.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the thing we were added is in the conference rooms, we had these digital boards that you can draw with your pointer, and you have white phones and all. But along with that, we had trackpads and also as a kind of Apple Pencil,
Mm-hmm.
and the like a markers that you can actually draw instead of writing using your mouse pointers, which is very tough. So you drawing with that mouse is a little bit tougher, but instead you have digital pens. That was really easy. And at the time when we were actually doing the architectural drawings and all, like we have shared documents like Excel, Google Docs, something like that. Imagine that you have a huge tablet on your meeting room, on your desk, and you can start writing immediately in that instead of using the digital whiteboards. That improved a lot.
You are right also, Giant. Those visual tools, especially writing with your hand, benefit. That's exactly why I use this board behind me. And in my previous industry work, I have seen boards that scan whatever you write. Even if you use a board marker, board was scanning the entire thing and sending to others. Those are all nice tools. Don't get me wrong, great improvements. What Lynn's question was, is there anything could be equivalent to face-to-face? So far, I haven't seen any, but of course, you can definitely improve. Any other questions, or does anybody want to add anything? Okay, let's continue with mind mapping. Mind mapping is essentially visualizing the project, what team thinks, and arranges all of those thoughts and concerns into a picture. Of course, it supports brainstorming and provides typically more creative solutions. Here, there are multiple tools. It can be user-friendly and even replace some of the in-person methods, but as an academic, I find a board, whiteboard or blackboard, is as an irreplaceable tool so far. So here, for example, this is how a team mapped its brain. As you can see, the triad is here, moisturizing body wash, and there are different parts of this mind, a team mind. You can use expert judgment. This is extremely useful when you have a area specific type of expertise, which your organization doesn't have any or have limited know-how. Bringing that expertise can benefit the project overall, or it can be from another unit, such as another department, someone from your customer organization. But typically nowadays, external consultants are preferred. if you use the expert judgment, you develop the portions of detailed scope management, identify major variables and deliverables, and they can all even help estimating costs or schedule. This is very helpful when you don't know how long it would take to complete a specific task. Delphi method is an iterative process, and it's another tool that we use. It derives a reliable consensus from a group of experts on highly complex problems, most of the time never have been undertaken before. Experts participate in a Delphi panel anonymously, and the facilitator uses a questionnaire to solicit feedback. I have seen this in action research once, where a billionaire was trying to form a university. They invited me actually to contribute to the future of this university that doesn't even exist. They wanted to create a new kind of university. This was even before Corona pandemic. I think nowadays it will be much more critical to have these new kinds of universities instead of conventional ones. After a while, the objective is to reach to a consensus with a group mind of experts, get together and decide what would be the best for the goals. And finally, there's Pareto chart. These are essentially histograms ordered by frequency of occurrence rather than following a classical frequency distribution. These add up. Pareto's law follows this, where it says 80% of problems are due to 20% of the causes. So it might be a good idea to go with that, go and solve that 20% for the overall benefit. Here's a Pareto chart. You look at an organization called Multicare. It's prototype frequency. You see number of prototypes, and typically it fits to this Pareto's law, where 80% of the issues with this new prototypes, let's say in this case, is due to 20% of the causes. Oh, I forgot about mentioning cause and effect diagrams. Great tools to figure out the root cause of a problem. So how is this useful? Well, there's a problem, right? In order to undertake a project, we start with a problem. That's the problem to solve. But what are we going to do? What are we going to solve, really? Well, there's a very interesting analysis with a funny name. It's called why analysis. I'm not kidding. It's called that. Like, you keep on asking questions why until you reach to the root cause. Here is a little bit warning. If you ask why too many times, there are some speculations that you reach to the God. So keep it in moderation. You ask why multiple times, 6 to 7, then you reach to the multiple cause. If these causes fall into specific attributes here, such as the process, people, infrastructure, and implementation, then you start, once you identify them, then you can start solving them. These cause and effect diagrams has also a different name, fishbone analysis. As you can see, it looks like a fish. There is the, and all the lines look like the bones of the fish. You can come up with an analysis like this. And finally, you can make a decision tree analysis, where which is used when some of the future outcomes are uncertain. So if one event happens, you can switch from one decision, one branch of the decision to the other branch. Here is an example. For example, here you develop 2 prototypes, which would cost $260,000, or 3 prototypes, and then an event happens. This is your choice, not the environmental random event. After this, the probability of success is 80% for 2 prototypes, and being unsuccessful is 20%. Here you can see the probabilities. And with this, you can come up with a decision tree. And there are even ways to calculate all these expected values by multiplying these outcome results with the probabilities. And that can give you a picture of monetary, I guess in this case, expected value of this project. So let's continue with this last. Last slide, last presentation will be about risk management. And as far as risk management, this is one of the fields I really enjoy in projects. Risk management deals with probabilities. And someone whose background is statistics, I like to come up with all these educated guesses of what could happen. Of course, the learning objectives here is understand what risk is, discuss the elements involved in risk management, describe the risk identification process, and we'll talk about risk management overall. Risk is defined as the problems that haven't happened yet. What does that mean? Well, it essentially means it could happen with some probability, but I don't know. In projects, your actions can be certain, but environmental factors can change the outcome. This is one of those cases. Why is it hard? Because humans, as a behavior, are afraid of being the bearer of bad news. No one wants to be seen as the negative person who says, what if this fails? Even if it's with a low probability. But if you can do it correctly, the chances are you can avoid a much bigger crisis. There are different types of risks, such as schedule risks, cost risks, the environmental risks, such as the pandemic that we are having right now. And of course, classic mistakes that are being done in a project setting. As you look at the risk management process, it is about assessment and control. Once you identify, analyze, and prioritize risks, there's a chance that you can control. But in my experience, most of this costs money. In order to control risks, you need to buy insurance. I'm not saying go out there and purchase insurance in projects. What you need to do is you have to figure out more resources in order to mitigate risks. And sometimes in real life, project managers don't like to allocate resources just for a probabilistic event. If they are lucky, that would make them great project managers. But I have seen so many desperate situations where projects turn into disasters just because stakeholders in that project refuse to consider even risks. And here is a sample.
A question on that chart you're just showing us there.
Jeff, this one?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if, like, why risk control potentially wasn't after all the risk assessment activities. You know, why is it forking off at the risk management level? Should we be going assessment and then control?
Typically, it's done concurrently. Of course, if you don't identify the risk, you cannot control it. I don't think here this chart is time-based. So this chart is created by Bohm in '89, and his goal is to divide risk management into two categories, not necessarily one before the other.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, but you're absolutely right. If you don't assess the risk, if you don't know what the risk is, how can you control it? I mean, it doesn't even make sense. Here is a sample risk management plan for a just-in-time training project. And as you can see here, there are some budget and schedule items based on specific risk-related tasks, and deliverables are determined. Budget and schedule information will be provided. There are risk categories that you can create, and along with potential impacts. And finally, it's a very good idea to document it. These documentations can be really gloomy, and I have seen a couple. For example, remember I was talking about earthquakes in Istanbul? Then I went to this folder, the risk management folder of our department, and there was a standard operating procedure for earthquakes. So I opened that specific page, I went over it, and there are different types of earthquakes, and each type, it was talking about the death of employees, specifically process managers. So that folder was talking about what to do after I die in an earthquake, which is not a fun subject in any means, but if you document it correctly, it provides you a guide in terms of crisis situations. Risk identification is the process of understanding what events might hurt or enhance a particular project. You get your team involved and use a checklist or similar source to brainstorm possible risks. You make a register of contents, an identification number for each risk event, a rank, hopefully based on the probability of that risk event happening, name them and go through all this contents. All of these would be attributes in your checklist. Here's a sample risk register. There are risk items, ranks, and all the other attributes on this subject. Performing quantitative risk analysis is the process of prioritizing risks for further analysis. Once you have that list, let's say, what kind of risks are there in Tacoma? We talked about hacking. Like if someone hacks to University of Washington Tacoma systems, you would have a probability for it. I'd say 50%. And the loss is hiring a consultant, updating systems, let's say 100K. Are there bigger risks like that would cost you more? Yeah, there is something called Mount Rainier next to Tacoma. That's a risk. If it erupts, that would be that would cost much more to the University of Washington Tacoma. So yeah, you would lose millions, but what is the probability of that happening? The probability I would assign to that would be much, much less. So in risk analysis, you multiply probability with the loss. So let's say probability of hacking is 50%, loss is 100K. That estimate would be 50,000 because you multiply probability with the cost. If the probability of a volcanic eruption is 1%, well, then for that eruption to be risky, you have to have millions of dollars of loss. So $1 million multiplied with 1%, $10,000. Still not as bad as the hacking event. To perform quantitative risk analysis is the process of analyzing the effect of identified risks on overall objectives. As I said before, there is probability of occurrence and the potential impact. How would you identify the estimated cost? Very simple. You multiply the probability with the dollar value in terms of potential impact. Sometimes it's hard to turn all of these measures into dollar value, but if you can, that would give you a picture. Here is a sample probability impact matrix. If you look at the probabilities here, so this looks like a hacking event with low impact, but very high probability. And this looks like a volcanic eruption event. Very, very low probability, but if it ever happens, it will have a very high impact. In this risk matrix, risk is defined as the intersection between the probability of occurrence and the potential consequences. And you can develop a stop-like chart, such as the red says stop, yellow proceed with caution, and green good to go. For example, if a high-risk event such as earthquake, volcano eruption happens, that stops the project, and then you should identify the losses. Risk control involves the executing the risk management process to respond to risk events. There should be workarounds. For example, remember the time P&G had a plan for my death? Yeah, not only that, they had a plan if the entire plant collapsed, how they could switch from production from Istanbul plant, where I worked, to another plant in Timișoara, Romania. I remember reading it because I knew that when that plant is active, that would be my death. Every high and medium risk issue should have also risk response plan. These response planning options can be contingencies, like just in case, or include risk transfers and assumption, the things that you live with it. And here are some definitions about risk management, ranging from contingency planning to risk transfer. We can talk a little bit more on contingency planning. It's a response to minimize the negative consequences. And what you do as a control is where project stakeholders take active steps to reduce this probability of risk occurrence. For example, if you're considering a hacking event might affect this process, what do? Well, you get a second router, the more secure switch. Or in my case, in this Zoom meeting, there is a risk of this computer crashing. How do I control it? Well, I have a backup computer on the right-hand side, just in case if computer crashes, something happens, there's a chance that I can continue. Can I eliminate the entire risk? Transfer it completely? No, because if the entire house's internet goes, there's nothing I can do. Sometimes you accept the risk and then find another way to solve a problem. In terms of evaluative criteria, on all potential risk response options should be identified. This is, again, I'm not sure if you can identify all possible risks and with the right probability, because not everybody can come up with all risk options. The key here is to be flexible. So this will be our last discussion, and we will go to groups again, and then I want you to come back after about 10 minutes to finish our class today. So question is, what are some project risks you have encountered? Did you overcome those risks, and how? let's create the groups.